Feeling lost in the noise of social media? INSPO cuts through the clutter, connecting you directly with real insights from real experts and industry leaders. It's a new social network dedicated to knowledge sharing, industry insights, and thought leadership. Get the latest from top minds in your field, or build your own thought leadership portfolio on INSPO. Already trusted by thousands of professionals worldwide, be part of the conversation and download INSPO Experts today on the App Store or visit www.inspo.expert.
Welcome back to the Take a Chance on You podcast, hosted by me, Alexandra Forsyth. Today, I am so excited to be passing the mic to Mark Pagdin, who is the founder and CEO of Onion Security, a cybersecurity and compliance-based company working with fintech and investment firms. Onion Security is based in London, and as they say, it offers consultancy and it's driven by Mark supporting compliance. But they offer a range of different services in terms of compliance certifications, policy development, risk management, pen testing, and CISO support as well. So Mark, how are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Alex. Thanks very much for having me on today.
Excited to be here.
I am excited to be here. Yeah. A bit nervous, but
You'll be
fully ready to go.
So Mark, what might be quite nice is I've given a little bit of an introduction into your company and what you're doing, but do you want to just give the listeners an introduction into who you are and what you've been doing up until now?
Absolutely. So last 20 plus years, I've been in financial services within tech teams. So I've done everything from desktop support in my early career, crawling under desks and helping traders with every kind of issue you can imagine. Over the years, I worked up into infrastructure team, was involved in infrastructure projects to support trading firms, ran a support desk for a trading firm as well. And I kept being brought into different areas of tech over the years and became, I would say, a generalist, a jack of all trades. And then I started to focus more on security, governance, risk and compliance, and found that was an area that I became quite passionate about. I really could see the benefit for the firm. And from there, it grew into just being more and more involved in making sure the firm was doing the right things in the right way from the tech perspective, and meeting regulator expectations, meeting investor expectations, doing due diligence reviews, and really getting grilled by investors, making sure that we were doing the things the right way and in the way that they would expect us to do them. So then, as I say, after 20 odd years, I decided it was my time to do my own thing and do it, have a exciting challenge of setting up my own firm. And I'd never done that before. So after this, being in the secure environment of a full-time job for 20 odd years and then going alone is, as you know, quite a different experience. But it's been the best year of my life so far in terms of, well, it's over a year now, in terms of the people I've met, the things I've learned, the freedom and the opportunity to do things in the way that I view to be the right way. So yeah, really enjoying it so far.
That's amazing. You've had such a varied career already. And I just want to preface to people that fortunately got a sore throat today. I was saying to Mark before the episode, I'm feeling a little bit unwell. So I am going to be throwing it to Mark today to really dive into what we want to talk about. And I think there's some really interesting insights that Mark will provide. But going back to what you just mentioned then, as I say, a really varied career. And it, as you said, really quite challenging to not only understand the landscape in terms of technology, GRC, but actually be grilled by investors, as you say, and put yourself forward and have to have the hard conversations, because cybersecurity, for anybody listening who isn't necessarily familiar with cybersecurity, you have the IT and tech side where we've got to keep on top of regulations, we've got to keep on top of trends that are taking place. But I would say 80 to 90% of it is having those hard conversations, is speaking to people every day in meetings, in stand-ups, and feeding back data, patterns. If we're implementing a new tooling or wanting to build a cybersecurity program, we then have to have investment, find funding. It's having those types of conversations as well.
And I found those investor due diligence meetings, you would share, knowledge share, which is very powerful. So they would certainly learn from us and vice versa. So, and that's, I think, I mean, listening to other episodes of your podcast, as well as just in the industry in general, knowledge sharing, transparency, responsible transparency, but transparency and knowledge sharing is one of the key ways that we can all be more secure and also move forward and benefit from other people's experiences and mistakes as well as their successes.
No, definitely. That can't be understated, really sharing knowledge, as you say, empowering each other, allowing each other to have a voice. I always use that phrase, be seen and heard. You want to feel like that in the workplace. That's cross-industry, not just cybersecurity that we're in, but marketing, business, finance, retail, consumer goods, any industry that you're in. You want to be challenged, but to also feel as though you can ask questions and gain valuable feedback. That's part of that knowledge sharing piece. I think that's fantastic that you mentioned it. And I guess going back to, for anybody listening that may not be familiar with the cybersecurity side, what about GRC and kind of the investment side? Is there anything else you can add to that?
Yeah, I think keeping up to date with the latest regulations, which is challenging because it's a constantly changing area. And it's international as well, especially if you're working for a company that is falling under multiple jurisdictions. So again, joining different industry groups specific to your industry in the tech sphere can help. On LinkedIn, being in members of appropriate groups, subscribing to the relevant newsletters, all of those things are very helpful. Joining roundtables, going to conferences. What I've definitely learned over the last year, I've done the most networking of my life so far. That's really just accelerated my learning and my own personal development. So last year I went to the House of Commons and along with lots of other members, and we were presented to by one of the MPs dedicated to cybersecurity. So that was really eye-opening and interesting, and so highly recommend as a way to keep up to date. Just join as many organizations as you can.
They'll go away and have a look and tag in the comment section of the podcast, because in the show notes, apologies for the podcast, because they're a fantastic organization for cybersecurity. But if I think about season 1 and what you said, Mark, being cross-industry, when I was talking to guests, I had one guest, project management, the marketing side, I was still able to help her, because when I do my research, sometimes that will involve social media. So Instagram, TikTok, as well as LinkedIn. Job advertisements are across the board on social media now. They're not just on one platform such as LinkedIn, but across the board, or groups, as Mark said, cybersecurity being one. But if you are cross-industry, for anybody listening, just dabble in the different platforms and see what's out there. Reddit sometimes. I'm a sucker for Reddit. I'm in so many of the different groups. I can't help myself if I've got a question. And somebody put a post out the other day. The post was what I do. If I have a question, I'll put it into the Google search bar and then I'll just put Reddit at the end. I'm so interested to see what the community thinks. And Reddit is really that platform where there's a big, big community of different people talking about all subjects. So I'm amazed that I hadn't used Reddit. I've been using it for a couple of years, hadn't used it before that at all. So I absolutely love a platform like Reddit, a social networking site. But there, and then there's also other apps that you can download. As Mark said, networking, again, can't be understated. Going to events, even just having a virtual coffee or an in-person coffee with somebody, reaching out to say, do you want to have a catch up? I'd love to introduce myself. Doesn't have to be a sales pitch in the beginning. It's more just making that connection and giving it a go.
Yeah, I thoroughly agree. I mean, that's how we met, right? We just connected on LinkedIn. And I think putting yourself out there a bit and actually reaching out to people who you would like to maybe mirror their career in the future, just dropping them a message and saying respectfully, like, I really am impressed by your career so far and I'd love to have a coffee just to understand your journey and see if I can learn from that. Most people enjoy talking about themselves, me included. Therefore, they're very unlikely to say no. And if they do, it's not personal, they're just busy or whatever, or shy. So yeah, I would definitely encourage that. The same with going to actual in-person events and putting yourself out there a bit. And actually, most people at these awkward cyber events do want to speak to people. They're just scared to make the first move. So just walk over to people and shake their hand. And most 9 times out of 10, they will engage with you, and you never know where it's going to lead. So I would highly
Definitely.
encourage that.
I would also say follow up. So follow up with somebody if, as Mark said, if they're busy, which 9 times out of 10, that is the most likely scenario. It's not that you're being ignored at all, even if, and I'm quite terrible for this, I will read the message and I will anticipate, okay, I'm going to follow up with that message in a couple of hours or during lunch or tomorrow morning. I will have already imprinted the date in my mind, but for whatever reason, I've got sidetracked. So it looks like I've read it and haven't responded, but I will follow up. I probably should just write that actually and just say I'm going to follow up with you soon. But definitely follow up. I love it. I love when somebody emails me and says, just checking in. Do you still want to have that catch up? Do you still want to have that call? That shows perseverance for me, and it shows a little bit of the eagerness. They want to speak to you. So don't ever feel afraid to follow up and put yourself out there and say, well, actually, no, I'd quite like to have this conversation. I've asked. And the worst thing that can happen is they say no. And they just say, no, that's it.
And the other thing I've personally benefited from is finding someone that I respect and asking them to be a mentor for me. And that's one of the best things I've done. Like, he's been so kind, so generous with his time. Is certainly something I would like to give back in the future and help some younger generation going forwards. But yeah, for sure, if there's someone you really respect like that, ask them to be your mentor. Don't hold back. Like, they'll probably be very flattered and they probably will say yes. And it can really move your career forwards in ways that you can't imagine. That's something I've learned from the last year.
Definitely. And I think the whole idea around being a mentor, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a meeting every single week with your mentor. If you're strapped for time, they're strapped for time, it could be that you block 30 minutes to an hour bi-weekly or once every month. If you want more time, that's where you have a conversation and say, well, actually, I would quite like to meet you every Friday in the beginning for the first couple of months. And then after that we could meet up once a month going forward. So it's all about communication. It's just having that conversation. How much time can you give as a mentor? How much time can the mentee give if they're looking for a job or their first job and they're trying to keep on top of the workload that they've been given? So it's all about the communication side.
And
so
it
valuable.
definitely, yeah, to your point, like, depending on the mentor's time and your time, and perhaps you're going for a challenging moment and you need them, but then for 3 months you might not need them at all. And that's, as you grow and you start to leave the nest, so to speak, you'll need them less and less, and then you're able to give that back to the community in other ways.
Which is, it's really interesting you say that, because I'm currently mentoring somebody who's based in the US, and exactly what you just mentioned there. We had bi-weekly check-ins for the first couple of months. They're doing a lot of different projects. They want to segue into cybersecurity, but they're currently based in more of a IT managerial role. They want to move. But we're having a pause because they're off. It's conference season in the US is so heavy for that in the summer. I think Black Hat's coming up either next week, or I can't remember whether it's already taken place or is taking place. I'm unsure. But my mentee is going to Black Hat and a lot of different conferences. So yeah, we put a pause on it and then we'll come back together in September, October when they're ready and they want to check in. It's absolutely fine. So definitely being flexible. Time.
Definitely notice how with the seasons our industry just goes through peaks and troughs of busyness, although bizarrely August seems to be my busiest month so far this year. But I could see everyone ramping up for September, October already. So it's interesting.
Well, it's interesting because, like I say, the US I think is a little bit different. Their conferences, they've got a lot going on in the summer. I was looking at the schedule and a lot of things are happening in August, whereas London and other parts here where we seem to stall a little bit. And as you say, everybody's getting ready for September. Autumn and the winter months are just absolutely crazy, I think, across the board. And then it slows down again a little bit in January. Everybody's away or getting back from the holidays, getting back to work. And then February, it ramps up again. So it's just working that out. But going back to what you said, Mark, right at the beginning, being a solo founder and an entrepreneur, you have to learn all of this on the go, the peak seasons, and then when people are taking time off, which I'd say for the first year is, for me, this is my first year. So it's very much next year. Maybe I'll plan to do things a bit differently in August. Maybe I'll go away or I'll complete some certifications, etc.
So I'm planning on going away shortly. But if I'd known how busy I was going to be in August, maybe I would have rescheduled. So I think expect the unexpected with running your own firm. As you know, you're surprised, continually surprised.
Continually surprised. I think it is the meeting side of things. My meetings that I have with potential clients, or if I meet with a lot of executives all the time, we just have catch ups, and they're not based in London, so the time zone throws me off a little bit, because normally it's the afternoon for me, it's the morning for them, and they're 45 minutes to an hour conversation, which I absolutely love, because it's meeting people, it's talking about, for me, it's talking about cyber, which I'm so passionate about the industry. I could talk. But yeah, it's the meeting side of things, and then you do the projects. It's the whole ecosystem of that, which there's never enough hours in the day, to be honest. But we love it. That's why we do it.
Yeah, it keeps you busy. Which kind of brings me on to, before we spoke, I was thinking about the things I'd like to talk to you about. And I think work-life balance, as everyone is aware, is so important, but also some of the activities you can do outside of your day-to-day can really influence your career. So I made a conscious decision in the last 2-3 years to embrace comedy and learning comedies. I went and started off with improv as a learning experience, so improvised comedy, and I went to a school which I'd highly recommend to anyone based in London, called Hoopla, but there are plenty of improvised comedy schools around the world, and meetup groups, etc., that you can do. And the reason I found it so valuable is it's making you think in a different way. You're using a different side of your brain from the side you use for most of your hours in the day. It brings your confidence and interpersonal skills on leaps and bounds. You are forced to deal with uncertainty. You are forced to deal with engaging with your partner. So there's a concept in improv comedy called yes and. If I were to say to you, I'm a doctor and a pirate, you would reply, of course you are. I'm also a parrot, and something along those lines. So rather than saying, no, you're not, you never say no like that in improvised comedy. You always support your partner. So that supporting nature is very useful when you go back to your working career and you're dealing with unexpected things and you're having to be adaptable and dealing with change very rapidly. So that was a first thing that really has strengthened my career so far. But the other thing I then decided to do was to investigate stand-up comedy. So again, through Hoopla, but there are, as I say, an Angel Comedy Club in North London as well, which I would highly recommend. They do free writing gyms where you can go and learn how to write stand-up comedy. And with that, it was an 8 weeks of writing what you think are funny observations, etc., and you have to present them to your classmates. You do that for 7 weeks, and in the 8th week you stand up in front of friends, family, colleagues, etc., 60 odd people, and you present a 5-minute sketch or piece of stand-up comedy. And I've done public speaking before, I've done plenty of different challenging things, but that has certainly pushed me to the edge of my comfort zone. But it gives you a natural high, I would say, and it gives you the ability to really put yourself out there, which is such an important skill to then take back to your career. So highly recommend that, and it's a lot of fun. You will laugh more than you can imagine.
When you first told me, and this is going back to when we first connected, I want to say during the beginning of the year, maybe January, February, but when you first told me that you dabbled in stand-up comedy, I couldn't believe it, because you're actually one of the first leaders/founders who I have met that dabbles in stand-up comedy. As you say, there are ties with public speaking, which is fantastic, but that improv, it reminds me of kind of musical theatre and drama, and I studied drama my GCSE when I was at school, and I used to be on the stage. I absolutely loved it. But stand-up comedy, as you say, it's definitely thrown into the deep end, because whilst with public speaking, you somewhat have a script, you can ad lib, you've got slides, you're comfortable to a sense of you're still vulnerable and you're still exposing yourself to an audience. I just saw the cat.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, I knew Cookie would want to
that's
make an
okay.
appearance. Sorry.
That's
Yeah.
fine.
Sorry, carry on, please.
No. That's okay. I was going to say, your cat's a boy or a girl?
So I've got two. I've got Cookie and Biscuit. They're both boys. One is slightly smaller than the other. Cookie's the smaller of the two. But yeah, they are.
You have to show them at some point.
Well, yeah, they will show themselves. They're cats, right? They do whatever they want whenever they want. So yeah, I will try my best, but I can't guarantee they'll make another appearance.
Okay. More the merrier. We need some pets on the show anyway,
Yeah.
liven things up a bit.
I think also pets, especially in our roles, to de-stress after a long day of work, I highly recommend.
Well, they do have bring your animal to work day, don't they? Bring your pet to work day. Yeah. Some companies do that. I've never been fortunate enough to work somewhere that does do that, but I think it's brilliant. If I was able to take my dog or cat to work, that would really help me. Yeah,
I'm not sure the cats are so keen on traveling, but yeah, dogs definitely, I could imagine, would make the day nicer in the office.
But going back to what you mentioned, the only thing I was going to say was, like I said, with the public speaking, you are vulnerable and you are exposing yourself, but it feels more comfortable than stand-up comedy. It's just on the fly, isn't it? I guess you do have time to prep and get yourself ready, but definitely not with improv, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, with improv, if you try and prepare, you're just going to ruin it because it won't feel authentic. The thing how you prepare for improv is they get you to play games which encourage spontaneity, and they have an ethos of you can never be wrong in improv, and you obviously it has some guidelines which are always be supportive, kind to others, and not belittle people or be mean to people. That they're the only real criteria, and beyond that you can't make a mistake in improv. So it's lovely to be able to just be yourself and really say what comes to mind in that instant. While with stand up, people said to me, "Oh, are you not scared of being heckled?" And I was like, "No, but I am scared of silence." So that is your real enemy when it comes to stand up. Silence is terrifying, but people laughing or groaning or just generally rolling their eyes is fine, but silence is the enemy.
Silence is the killer, I guess, of stand-up or improv. Yeah. But I really loved what you mentioned about it allows you to go back to work with a more evolved mindset. And when you mentioned the yes and concept, I really love that, because I was listening to a podcast the other day and it was reiterating that when you're talking to your team or when you're talking to your manager, and they're voicing their opinion to you, as you just said with the yes and, don't immediately shut them down. So don't say no, but actually say, yes, I acknowledge what you've said. Have you thought about it this way? And you're acknowledging them straight away so they feel seen and heard. And then at the same time offering a slightly different perspective that person will probably sit. If it were me, I would sit back and say, so I've been seen and heard. I've been allowed to talk. My opinion and perspective is out there. Now I can go, oh, but they're thinking about it in a slightly different way. Maybe I need to consider that.
And also think, 100% agree with that, but also learning to fail, learning that it's okay to say something that you didn't like, say something silly or to say something incorrect, as long as you learn from it and as long as your intentions were good, you weren't out to upset someone or be mean to someone. I think it's okay to make mistakes. In running your own business, as you make mistakes all the time. It's just don't keep making the same mistake, and also share that knowledge with your friends and peers. Like don't just sit there making the same mistake, because that is sad.
I think
just being prepared to fail. Sorry, Alex, go for it.
No, you don't need to say sorry. It's because you keep saying things, and I immediately think I agree with it so much. Learning to fail, also learning to just laugh at yourself. I've learned that a lot when I'm failing
Yeah.
or when I'm just having a crap day and nothing's going right. I've really learned the humorous side of things a lot
Mm.
more being solo and on my own. Not to say I don't have a community around me, because I do, but it's definitely learning to see the brighter side of things. Go and touch some grass, as the phrase goes.
Yeah. The other thing I've really been so pleasantly surprised by is how the small to medium sized business community is so welcoming and generous. So when I first started out, I joined the Federation of Small Businesses, and they connected me actually with my mentor. So highly recommend joining the FSB, as they say in this context. And they connect you with like-minded individuals, offer you like events, help with legal work. They offer you pre-canned contracts and certain insurances, and it's relatively cheap for the first year. And you can even ask for a discount code if it's your first year. And completely forgotten my train of thought, but
No, that's brilliant. I think I'm familiar with the Federation of Small Businesses. I think I'm familiar with them. Again, everything that Mark says in terms of resources, I will link in the show notes for anybody interested. But being able to have that help, as you say, legal templates, contract templates, or whatever they're offering for the first year, I think that's great.
And also, I've remembered it now. The link is that I always thought, as a small business owner, everybody is going to be my competition, and it couldn't be further from the truth, because there's enough work for everybody out there. And also, by interfacing with other small business owners, you expand your network, you become more marketable, you become better connected and more likely to get work. So embrace the other SMEs around you, get to know them, understand them, learn from them, ask for their advice, and most of them will help you. And that blew my mind a little bit, because I was used to working for bigger organizations where you don't really, I mean, okay, there's some cross-pollination. People leave a company, go to another, so you have that network. But in general, they're the enemy, right? But in the SME world, I don't view it that way. And I think it will stand you in good stead if you don't view it that.
I think that's such a great way to look at it. There will always be competition out there across industry, but it's not on your doorstep as much as you think it is. And not everybody that you talk to is selling the same services as you. Even if they are, they might be doing things just slightly differently, and that's okay. You can share knowledge, going back to your point, and sharing knowledge, hearing other people out, having those conversations, just being open-minded and optimistic towards life, as well as the community around you, the people around you. But the small to medium-sized business industry, I guess we could say, it is growing a lot, and it's really nice to hear that it's so welcoming and inviting, because I think if we look at cybersecurity, they seem to get it the hardest in terms of resources, not having access all the time, not having the funding to be able to have the services that we offer, because cybersecurity is so expensive to really implement a good solid foundation of good solid programs. So yeah, it's really nice to hear that as well.
Yeah. And also, I think not being afraid to sometimes give your time for free. So having free scoping calls, having helping people. Sometimes you'll engage with the client and they're not in the right place to engage your services, but they will remember you in 6 months, 8 months, 2 years, who knows. You always, I think, approach it with an open mind. And obviously there's a line and you don't want people to cross that line, but give some of your time for free, and people remember that. They remember your attitude, and you never know when they're going to come back knocking at your door. And I think that's like one of the things that I've observed over my career is the relationships you build throughout your career. If you foster those, like you meet someone nice at an event or you're at work, you connect with people and you add them on LinkedIn. And in 3 years' time, they will remember you because you've put in that effort to build that relationship, to foster that relationship. And they'll remember you as that person who was kind, who was thoughtful. You never know where that will lead. And I can definitely say from my experience so far that 10, 15 years later, people remember you still and still will come to you with work. It's not just about that. It's just about doing the right thing and being a good human, but it definitely doesn't hurt your career either as a nice side effect.
No, I definitely agree with that as well. Fostering good working relationships doesn't always have to be about work. Sometimes you can make friends along the way. We talk about nurturing on the client side and nurturing on the working relationship side, but also on the friendship side. You just never know who you're going to meet. So as you say, being open to that. And again, I couldn't agree more. I always say never burn a bridge, never leave things on a sour note. If in the workplace, if you're transitioning from corporate into entrepreneurship, whatever it is that you're doing, or from one industry to another, or a completely different career pathway that you didn't imagine, just remember that you just never know when you're going to see that person again. You really don't. It could be when you're walking down the street, it could be when you're getting a coffee, it could be at an event or a conference. You're doing public speaking, they could be in the audience listening to everything you have to say. So it will allow you to feel your most authentic self, knowing that you've left things on a good note. Even if you're a little bit annoyed by something, you could still voice your opinion in a constructive way and give that feedback in a constructive way, not flying off the handle or saying something that you never know how it's going to land in years to come. Because taking industry out of the equation, London's quite a small world. A lot of us definitely know each other here, so it's even just cross industry. So if it's like that in London, it's like that all over the world. So it's just keeping that in mind.
And I think keeping a cool head will stand you in good stead anyway. Like, I know from working in quite stressful financial services environments, you have to be the one that remains cool. Even if someone's very upset, very stressed, and they're understandably stressed, they're under pressure, they can't do their job because the system has stopped working. You need to reassure them. You need to almost be like a counselor, but also be calm yourself so that you can then think under pressure and resolve the issue as quickly as possible. And remember, it's not personal. It can feel personal at the time, but there's no point like responding to those sort of situations with aggression back. It will do no favors. And they're just very stressed. It's not you.
Completely agree. Never take anything personal. It's all business. It's never anything that's said to you, unless it really is directed at you as a person, will always tie back to the business, tie back to doing the best thing for the clients. If I think about consultancy, I've worked in that arena for a number of years. It was never about me. Even right at the beginning, some of the really hard meetings, it was always making sure that the client had everything that they need, making sure that they're looked after because they're investing in us. So we therefore need to make sure that they have, like I say, everything that they need. I've lost my train of thought now. There was something that you mentioned which I was going to come back with, but no, I definitely agree. I always say never take anything personally as well. And going back to what you say about keeping a cool head, there are so many times I've sat in meetings, even now, and I can just feel myself burning inside, but you would just never be able to tell on my face. It would always be cool, calm and collected. Because if you're calm, your team is calm, clients calm, and nothing good comes of it, really. If you do shout and you do get angry, unless you're in a really comfortable position with your team and you can laugh about it. So somebody gets a bit angry about something and then you just all laugh because you find it funny and you think, oh, release. Unless it's that type of environment, I just don't feel that it will get you anywhere. You need to be proactive, not reactive.
Yeah. And understanding your audience, like, why are they upset? Like, empathy is such a powerful skill. It gets you so far in your career and in your personal life. If you can understand people around you, put yourself in their shoes and think, why are they frustrated? What would I be frustrated in that situation? Yeah, I would. Okay, so what would I want done? Okay, and it's quite simple stuff, but actually putting in practice can be challenging. But when you do, it really pays off. So yeah, it comes back to, again, putting yourself out there a little bit and using your other soft skills to get the best out of your day, whether that's in work or out and about in the street. If someone's aggressive to you out in the street, like, responding with aggression is probably not going to make the situation any better. And the same in the workplace. But luckily, I think cultures have changed from even in the last 20 years. There's still a long way to go, I think, but obviously there's plenty of change that needs to happen. But it is positive in lots of ways in the workplace. It does feel better than it was 20 years ago. But it definitely has some improvement. There are improvements that can be made. And one thing, like, I really have stressed to the clients that I've met, I only want to work with nice, kind, thoughtful people. And I will sacrifice certain work if I feel that it's not a collegiate environment. That is the beauty of working for yourself. You can choose within reason who you work with. And when I start to recruit people, my number one criteria for recruiting will be, do you have kindness, empathy, good interpersonal skills? Are you a good listener? Yeah, they're key things that I really value, and I think it will make Onion an even better company over time.
I completely agree. I keep saying that line throughout, but I do. Your values need to align in your respect, Mark. They need to align with the work that you're having come in, so the people that you're working with. If you are working for a company, when you're having an interview for that company, asking questions as well. I always say you're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you, and that extends beyond the interview process. When you're being onboarded, work there for a couple of years, just constantly checking in with yourself. If my values are evolving as I am as a person, are they now matching up with the people in the environment that I'm in and I'm surrounding myself with? So that can't be understated. Leading with empathy. I think just leading, for me, I always lead with the desire to help other people. That really is quite crucial for me. All of the projects I do, we've created cyber programs this year, co-created with others for women, for different companies, and we've always led with the co-desire to help others. And I never forget that. And I think it's why I love consultancy so much, because obviously you're working with clients day in, day out, and you're helping them. Public speaking, you're helping the audience, the podcast, I'm helping guests to reflect on their journeys for a little bit. So that is my core value, I think.
And it shows through in what you do, and people can see it. And I actually wanted to give a few book recommendations, if that's okay, Alex, because
Gosh,
like
show
over the
notes
last
are going to
year,
be great with all of these resources.
like the tips that people have given me over the last year. So one of my friends recommended to me, he's a successful business owner, and he recommended a book called The MOM Test. So MOM Test by Rob Fitzpatrick. And that book, the premise is, obviously, if you come up with an idea and you tell it to your mother's not going to say that's a rubbish idea. They're going to be, of course, sweetheart, that's a great idea. And it sounds quite sexist, but as a book, it's basically saying your nearest and dearest will always tell you what you want to hear. While when you're starting up a business, you need to hear some hard truths. And so I really got a lot from that book. It makes you think to actually frame your questions, your market research in a way that won't just evoke the answer you want to hear. So highly recommend that book. The second book is called Presence by Amy Cuddy. And that book is about everything around how you present yourself as a human to people, and your posture, the way you speak, the way you listen, the way you engage with people. And I got so much from that book. I can't recommend it enough to people. And then two slightly more fun ones are the podcast Darknet Diaries. If you haven't listened to that, I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's interesting. They get a myriad of different guests who are highly entertaining and knowledgeable. And the last one is the KrebsOnSecurity.com. So that's a
Fantastic
news source.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sure you know them, Alex, but they are really helpful. So yeah.
Really great.
And I welcome your recommendations as well, please, Alex, because I'm sure
I'm trying to think, you put me on the spot now.
Good.
Meant to be for you, Mark, not me. So I normally only read non-fiction. So that's autobiographies, memoirs. Mark talking about stand-up comedy today. My love for reading, I used to really love reading fantasy books. So Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, vampire-based books. God, I used to read all of those growing up. And then I stopped because you enter corporate and life just takes over. You just mold yourself into what you want to be. So I stopped reading fiction for 3 years. It's been 3 or 4 years. I've just recently started reading my first fiction book, coming back, and it's I think it's up for the Booker Prize award. Not that it matters, but it's a fantastic book. Anyway, it's called The Rest of Our Lives. The book is fantastic and it talks about human relationships. So the emotional intelligence side, and we haven't covered that, empathy. But that EQ versus IQ, I like to call it. So EQ, emotional intelligence, it's come from a friend. She told me about it and we spoke about it together. And emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion, just really putting yourself in somebody else's shoes if you can and just helping others. This book very much dives into human connection, human relationships, the breakdown of marriages and how, I don't know, I'm not very happy with the main character, if I'm honest, so I'm halfway through the book. I'm not going to give any spoilers. If you do want to go and read it, I really recommend it. It's a gorgeous summer read, even in the autumn, winter months. But yeah, it's breaking my heart a little bit. And I think it's why I stopped reading fiction, because I love to dissociate, I love to fantasize. So for me, reading a fiction, I just get so engrossed in the characters. But any fiction book that takes you on a journey, I love. And even with non-fiction, the non-fiction book that I'm reading right now is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But the book just talks through leadership styles. It is a big book. I think it's 300-400 pages, but it really just dives into, again, the different sides of human beings, how to present yourself well, how to take feedback. There's so many strategies in the book. There are diagrams, there are pictures. So it's really a multifaceted read. So I'm reading that in terms of the nonfiction side, The Rest of Our Lives for the fiction side. And I have just picked up Richard Branson's autobiography as well. I've been meaning to read it for the last 12 months. I just haven't got around to it. 'Cause again, it's a huge book. I think it's 500 pages. And I love a book, but where is the time coming from to read it all? So I'm trying to get stuck into that because I love his ethos around his company and just the way he's built his brand. Again, we haven't spoken too much about personal brand today, but as a solo founder and entrepreneur, thinking about the way you present yourself as a human being, and it goes back to what Mark said about that empathy as well, helping other people. That's part of who you are and your values.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think the reason I mentioned the Presence book is it talks about authenticity, and people, if you try and smile and force yourself to smile, people can pick up on those micro expressions and they know it's not genuine. Subconsciously, they'll know it's not genuine. So you're better off not trying to fake smile than you're actually fake smiling. And I think when it comes to brand, your brand is so linked to that presence and that authenticity, and that if you can tap into your emotional intelligence and you can really show your true self to people and it sounds quite a little bit out there, but showing who you really are to people and being that vulnerable, people respect that. They don't expect you to be a perfect person. They don't expect you to know everything. Being able to admit you don't understand something and asking a question from a client, they'll respect you more because you're investing in them. You're trying to understand the complexities of their business and you're engaged, and that will just really set you aside from other people, I feel. The last bit where you mentioned about EQ and IQ, I used to be obsessed by IQ and my IQ is not as high as other people, etc. But then when you realize actually you can now, especially with generative AI, etc., and you can learn from YouTube videos, you can learn things. But what is more challenging, even for someone with a high IQ, is to be able to work with people effectively, to be able to listen and learn and engage and get respect from people because they see you're thoughtful. And so that emotional intelligence will take you so much further in your career than just a straight IQ digit. So yeah, you see that with certain very, very wealthy and powerful individuals in the world where, okay, they may have very high IQs, but their ability to interface with human beings is terrible and ultimately will not lead them to growth in their life.
I think it will also help you as an individual at bringing your whole self to work. I really love that phrase. And that doesn't mean dumping your problems on somebody else or you've woken up on the wrong side of the bed and you come in and that's the only thing you talk about for the day. But it does mean being authentic. If you have had a bad night's sleep, if something's happened in your personal life and it is impacting your professional life, you do need to speak up about it and say, look, can I take the afternoon off? Can I take a few hours? Can I come in a bit later tomorrow morning because we don't have that meeting until after lunchtime? So it's navigating your life as a person, your personal, professional, not being afraid to bring that into your professional life, because look, we work more than we sleep, more than we rest. We work 5 days a week. For myself and Mark and any solo founders and entrepreneurs, it's 24/7 realistically. It's never ending. If the pen's not to the paper, then it's in the mind. We're thinking constantly, and that even extends, I know, to a lot of people in the corporate world or whatever industry you're in. You're just constantly churning away, constantly thinking about the next move that you're making. So it's not being afraid of that. And I think for me personally, right at the beginning of my journey, I was afraid of that. I was afraid of being my most true, authentic self. Not to say that I was wearing a mask, but I wouldn't talk about my personal life at all in the workplace. And that was to a detriment of myself, because you do relate to other people through your personal stories, through your personal journey. And like I said, you might not relate to somebody who's coming in and saying, I've had this blazing argument with my partner, but there are certain ways you can navigate it and talk about it, because we all go through challenges. So I definitely agree with what Mark said. Just being authentic, bringing your whole self to work, and it will make you feel a lot better.
And completely off topic, well, one thing I just want to say about ISC Squared, and I'm not being paid by them to say this, but if you are...
They will listen to this.
If you are earlier in your security career, they do offer some free training, I'm pretty sure, and free certification. And I think it's still running.
I will tag
the cyber one, and more than that as well, later in your career. So I've done the CISSP, Certified Information Systems Professional, and you can then, based on your experience, so I had enough years of experience, they then certify you as a professional as well. And I feel like that is invaluable as a marker to be able to hold up to people and say, I have attained this standard. It gives them a certain amount of confidence. And then during the 3 years after that exam has been passed, you have to keep your CPE. So your continuous professional development credits up to date. You have to get, I think, 20 over the 3 years to keep that, so you don't have to take the exam again. But I really feel like, especially for people with experience who just want a little bit of a badge or a shield to hold in their hand to give them that little bit of confidence going into meetings, interviews, etc., then I recommend that for your career path.
Brilliant. Mark shared so many resources today, and as I said, I will put them all in the show notes so you have access. And if you do want to follow along with Mark's journey, I will also tag his website for the company and LinkedIn. I'd highly recommend following Mark along. It's been absolutely amazing to have you on. We've spoken about so many different things, from your journey in the investment space, building your own company, offering that compliance side, but the stand-up comedy, improv, the ability to network, the ability to go back to work and then just see it with new eyes and a bit of a lift, helping you lead with empathy, communicate, collaborate with others. So we've spoken about so much, and it's been such a pleasure, Mark.
Thank
and I'm
you,
so happy
Alex.
that we
I've
connected
really enjoyed it.
a few months ago, and we'll stay connected and hopefully have you back on the podcast soon. I always say I would love for everybody to come back on in 12 months' time, and let's see where your journey has really taken you, maybe in person as well. We'll see where we go. But it's been absolutely fantastic. And yes, thank you so much to everybody for tuning in, and I'll see you all very, very soon. Bye.
Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you.